Well, welcome to our Meet the Candidates, a forum for candidates running in the November 8th general election. This segment of the forum is for Representative in House District 32A. I'm Carrie Lund, Executive Director of the Ham Lake Area Chamber of Commerce, who co-sponsor Meet the Candidates with the Anoka, Blaine, Coon Rapids Area League of Women Voters. All candidates were invited to this forum. The Chamber of Commerce and League of Women Voters do not support or oppose any political parties or candidates for office. The League does help citizens become informed voters and advocates for important issues. This is what this evening is about, informing voters. If you are interested in the League, visit their webpage, LWVABCMN.org. Women, men, and young people are invited to join. The views expressed in each forum are those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters or of our chamber. LWV posts complete, unedited recordings of forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan political purposes. The candidates will answer two introductory questions, which they received in advance, followed by questions submitted by the public via our website, and questions of importance to the Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters. We'll end with closing statements. Answers are limited to 90 seconds for each of the two introductory questions and 1 minute for each of the other questions. Candidates will take turns being the first to answer a question. Linda Rogers is our moderator for the evening.
Thank you, Carrie. Again, I'm Linda Rogers, and I'm happy to be moderating this forum with candidates Nolan West and Ashton Ramsammy, both running for Minnesota House of Representatives, District 32A. That includes all or parts of Blaine, Columbus, and Ham Lake. Is that correct? Yep, all or parts. Because I live in Anoka, I can't vote for either of the candidates. We'll begin with introductory questions, and we drew numbers to determine who will answer first. That order will be reversed for closing statements at the end of the forum. And candidates, again, if I mishandle something along the way, please let me know. Audience, please hold your applause until the event is over. Candidate West, what is your motivation to run for this office, and what experience or knowledge would help you serve effectively?
I want to thank the League of Women Voters and everybody here for coming out tonight. This is the latest debate forum I've ever been to. This is a new experience. But my main goal, and it really has been since the beginning, I want to finish the job that I've started. So I first served starting in 2017, and my first bill was getting 105th rebuilt in front of the National Sports Center. Got $3.2 million for that, got that started. Then after that, I worked to get $1.5 million in the bonding bill to get money for the study that you've heard mentioned throughout the night on Highway 65. And that has been my tireless goal from the beginning, is to rebuild Highway 65. And that is what government should be focused on. Core functions of government, which is keeping people safe and getting people where they're going. Highway 65 has been a nightmare. The last thing that was done on it basically was in 2009. The interchange was rebuilt at 125th Avenue and 65. Now, we should have 99th Avenue, thanks to funding I worked to get in the bill last year. We got $7 million for 99th Avenue, and that will be started, hopefully, by 2024. The Commissioner of Department of Transportation literally told me that, and I said I would repeat it to everyone I see. We're finally going to get started actually fixing that nightmare of a road, and that is something I've heard at the door over and over. And I've worked very hard across the aisle on this issue because everybody wants good roads. You just have to know how to make the case, build the relationships, and that's what I've been working on since 2017, and I want to finish the job in my next term here.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsammy, what is your motivation to run for this office, and what experience or knowledge would help you serve effectively?
Well, hello everyone. My name is Ashton Ramsammy, and I'm running for the Minnesota State House here at 32A. And the reason why I'm running for office is because I grew up here in Blaine. And everything I've done in my life has always been for community service. When I was 12 years old, I decided that all of a sudden I wanted to go volunteer at a nursing home, and my parents gladly let me do so. And from there, I joined the Civil Air Patrol, where I ended up, sorry. Well, I was part of Civil Air Patrol, where I studied a lot of military leadership alongside Representative Raleigh as well. And okay. I'm running because we need to restore accountability, transparency, and integrity to our government. For far too long, our government has been just going on its own, and we haven't really been having much say in it. You know, with everything going on with all the hyper-partisanship and political parties and everyone just being so one-sided, that's not how we're supposed to operate. When I first decided to run for office, I ran because I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to actually do some good. And, you know, then politics came in, and that's not how it's supposed to be. So I want to restore that sense of community back into politics. My campaign slogan is progress, not politics. And that's because we need to put our community first and party last.
Thank you. And again, candidate Ramsammy, what are your goals for the future of Senate District 32?
Let me make sure my mic's still on. So my goals for Senate District 32, for House District 32A is to...
I'm sorry, I misspoke.
It's okay.
I led
okay.
you down the garden path and you just came along.
It's a late
Sorry.
night. It's a late night. So my goals when it comes to our House District is to make sure that our infrastructure, which is everyone's top priority right now, is up to date to match the amount of growth that we're having in all of our cities. In the last 3 years, Blaine alone has grown about 10,000 people. Right now, as we're probably just sitting here, there are lots of properties now being built up in the northern half, and it's all going to be moved into. The issue is that our highways, Highway 65, cannot handle that. I remember back in 2017, I'm going to also age myself here, I was 16 years old. I got my driver's license in 2017, and I remember that every morning at 6 a.m., I would wake up to be ready by 6:30 so that I could leave at 6:45, but still be late to school at Spring Lake Park. And it was 8 a.m., it's 6 miles, and it took me over an hour to get there. And over the last 6 years, it hasn't gotten any better. It's only gotten worse. With all the people moving in here, we can't handle it, and we need to get stuff done about it now, and we need to make sure that it does get fully funded as soon as we can.
Thank you. And candidate West, what are your goals for the future of House District 32A?
Number one goal is to finish the job on Highway 65. So we're going to be starting on 99th soon, but whenever you get this money, it's about trying to get the state to commit enough money to where they have to keep giving it. So we're around $25-ish million in investment. Our local county and Blaine has gotten even more than that. So we have over $30 million for Highway 65 right now. And, you know, it's a fallacy, but the sunk cost fallacy is something you can take advantage of if you're paying attention. And I want to make sure that Highway 65 is funded. The total project's about $160 million. We got 30-ish down between the county, the city, and the state. I've introduced around 10 bills to do different intersections along that path, and each one of them has bipartisan support. I want to move those bills forward. The next one we're looking at after 99th will be 117th. After that, 109th and 105th. And then we also need to get a handle on the rising crime wave in our state. It is outrageous. I mean, I was hoping it was going to be an anomaly that would go away quickly. but it is here and it's here to stay. It wasn't just driving a car into Burlington Coat Factory in Northtown. It is now something we see all the time, and I hear about it at the doors frequently. And the last thing is dealing with inflation. So the federal government really handles most of that, but we can help people weather the storm. Eggs have quadrupled in price. People's budgets are getting destroyed. We need to reduce taxes so that people can afford to live here still.
Thank you. And now the questions that came from the public via our website. Again, Candidate West. News reports indicate a volatile economy now, and perhaps persisting, challenging small businesses in House District 32A. Does state government have a responsibility to assist small business, and if so, how?
We have one of the least business-friendly tax codes in the country. I mean, it's business, our personal income taxes, everything is outrageously expensive here. We tax our lowest income tax bracket higher than the highest income tax bracket in over a dozen states. Our state budget has ballooned by about $15 billion since 2011. So government's doing fine, but meanwhile, businesses are suffering. So we're sitting on $12-ish billion in a surplus, while businesses that were forced to be shut down by Governor Walz are hardly surviving this. And we all got, PPP loans and all this assistance from the federal government. But the situation hasn't improved. The situation's gotten much worse, because you can get all this money, but then when you're paying twice as much for construction costs or labor costs, that money doesn't mean what it meant when you got it. So the state does have a responsibility. We need to reform our property tax code in particular and reduce all our income taxes, particularly starting with the bottom bracket.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsammy, news reports indicate a volatile economy now, and perhaps persisting, challenging small businesses in House District 32A. Does state government have a responsibility to assist small business, and if so, how?
So I believe that state government does have a responsibility to help small businesses, especially through economic disparities, like right now with inflation and possible upcoming recession. When it comes to actually delivering that, though, we need to make sure that we are actually out there in our communities, at the small businesses, asking them where exactly they need help. A lot of businesses are facing supply chain issues, specifically in House District 32A. Supply chain issues because of 65, and of course, once again, going back to Highway 65 again. With 65, with the supply chain issues on top of everything going on in our economy, we have to make sure that they are supported and that they can still survive anything that happens with our economy.
Thank you. And again to you, Candidate Ramsammy. What, if any, strategies would you support to improve healthcare options for Minnesotans with mental health challenges?
So when it comes to mental health and reforming healthcare as a whole, so currently right now I'm a unit coordinator at the University of Minnesota Medical Center in child, adolescent behavioral mental health. And the biggest issue that I see when it comes to mental health across our state and in our communities is the fact that we do not have an actual state provider system. It's something that people can go to kind of like an Amazon, per se, of mental health providers, so they can actually see where there's places that are open that they can go and find help, because right now it is almost a year wait for someone, if you were to have a crisis right now, to go see a therapist to even get a spot in therapy. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you. Candidate West, what, if any, strategies would you support to improve healthcare options for Minnesotans with mental health challenges?
Yeah, we have a mental health crisis right now in our state, quite serious one, and I have a feeling it's going to get a whole lot worse. When people were shut in their homes for a year, we saw alcohol and drug consumption skyrocket. And we know those things lead to mental health problems. And that is going to be an avalanche, I think, that's about to come down on us. So this is a very important issue, and one of the biggest problems is insurance is still outrageously expensive. Now, we've made some progress on this in the legislature with bipartisan reinsurance reforms, which has directly led to insurance rates going down by around 20% on the individual market. We've kept that program going, which has kept it under control, because you can't get this care you need if you can't afford it. So we need to make sure that people can afford it by putting more money in their pocket and also keeping reinsurance going so we can keep health insurance costs trending downwards.
Thank you. And again, Candidate West, what is your plan for bringing more economic development in Blaine, Ham Lake, and Columbus?
Everybody would agree the biggest barrier is Highway 65. You drive up on Highway 65, coming from like Fridley, you'll see the entrance of Blaine on the west side is hardly developed. Where you'll see Mrs. B's dolls and the pool store, and then things that aren't developed at all. And that's going to be booming once that road is healthy. But right now, I've talked to the people who own the land that's not developed. They can't sell it because nobody knows what's going to happen. And now we finally do have the plans out, so they're going to see some interest outside there, but it's very concerning when the main thoroughfare that's going to deliver customers or deliver supplies to your businesses that you want to build can't get there, and you don't know how they're going to get there. So once we fix Highway 65, the city of Blaine and everything north is just going to explode in development. And we're already seeing that in Columbus on 35W. 35W is freshly rebuilt up there, or 35, and all over you're seeing new businesses be built, so we need to fix Highway 65.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsammy, what is your plan for bringing more economic development in Blaine, Ham Lake, and Columbus?
Well, as we all know, Highway 65. So yes, of course, Highway 65 is one of the biggest issues, but then we also have to look at the other roads as well. Yes, we will secure funding for Highway 65. I am fully confident that whether I'm elected, he's elected, or anyone's elected, that road will be done, because it's been far too long that nothing's been done at all. But when it comes to the side roads, so like University, for example, University that runs just on the western border of the district, University has it's University. If you've driven on University, it's got a lot of potholes. It's got basically just two skinny lanes with one line down the middle, but it has so much traffic that businesses there get cut out, and on top of that, cars can get ruined, and it just costs our city more money if we just actually were to invest more into those side roads, invest into just infrastructure in general across our district. It will help everyone.
Thank you. And again, to Candidate Ramsammy, seniors are the largest segment of our population. Minnesota state government does not have a designated advocate for senior issues. What are your ideas for identifying senior issues and working to address them through the legislature?
So I was actually prior to being a unit coordinator, I was a public policy analyst for the Anoka County Community Action Program. While I was there, I actually worked with the Minnesota Board of Aging, on aging, not of aging, on aging, and discussed a lot of the issues around seniors and seniors' rights. One of the biggest things I heard from the Minnesota Board of Aging was the access to internet broadband across the state of Minnesota, but then also making sure that we are able to help people navigate through the internet and navigate to Facebook, navigate to whatever they want to. It's like a freedom. And also another big issue, of course, is Social Security tax. Social Security tax, I don't understand why we have a tax on Social Security. While everyone who is retired has worked every single day to build everything that's in front of us. And frankly, when they retire, they shouldn't have to be burdened by taxes and debt and all of the other things that come with leaving your job and retiring.
Thank you. Candidate West, what are your ideas for identifying senior issues and working to address them through the legislature?
Well, I can tell you from experience, seniors have no problem advocating for themselves. They vote in droves, and they're the ones who are home when you knock on their doors. So when you campaign, honestly, it's young people who need to get better at advocating for themselves. I hardly hear anything from somebody under 40. So the biggest thing, in 2017, we eliminated Social Security taxes up to a certain point. It was around 70,000. So we are one of 12 states that tax Social Security at all. I agree, it doesn't make any sense. And we reduced it for some, or eliminated it for some, because it was too expensive to do it for everyone. We just didn't have the money in our surplus. We have the money in our surplus now. We have money to do it about 6 or 7 times over. So a full exemption of Social Security is what I've heard from seniors, their number one issue. I hear it all the time. It's that and healthcare costs, which I already mentioned. Reinsurance is the pathway to getting more affordable healthcare and also introducing more competition into that market.
Thank you. Candidate West, according to the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension's website, violent crime is up over the last 2 years. What is your plan to reduce violent crime in Minnesota?
Right now, 40% of convicted criminals with presumptive prison sentences, so they've already been through everything, they've been convicted, it's a presumptive prison sentence, and they get put right back out on the street on probation. That's from this Minnesota Sentencing Guideline Commission. We need to put criminals in jail when they're convicted. We have had years of horrible leadership at the executive office that has appointed judges who just don't punish criminals, has prosecutors who let them off the hook. So we need to put in more stringent laws to ensure that these people serve their time. And if that leads to more investments in our corrections facilities, well, we need to do that too. And the problem is we have radicals who don't seem to live in the real world pushing against these things, even though we know what works. We know how to get a handle on high violent crime, we just need to do it. But radicals have taken over, and that has really punished our state, and we need to reverse course.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsammy, what is your plan to reduce violent crime in Minnesota?
So I believe, of course, in the statement, innocent until proven guilty. When it comes to the statement about judges just letting people off the hook, our judges are there for a reason, and they are non-partisan. They're selected through a very extensive process for that job. I don't believe that judges are just letting criminals out. That is just basic fear-mongering. I mean, it sounds crazy because it is crazy. When it comes to crime, specifically to our district, I believe that with Blaine's move of banning street racing, that we will be moving at least smaller crimes out of the way and actually introducing, allowing the police to actually respond to crimes that they need to. And on top of that, we also need to make sure that our police has the funding to do their job.
Thank you. And again, Candidate Ramsammy. Given the recent Supreme Court ruling regarding Roe v. Wade, state legislatures may be enacting new laws regarding women's reproductive health issues, including access to care. What measures, if any, do you think the Minnesota legislature should enact regarding women's reproductive health?
So I strongly believe that every person has a right to their own body and their own decisions. And that includes personal decisions such as an abortion. I believe that we do need to codify, or I've heard codify earlier, we need to codify the actual state statutes already into our state constitution. We need to make sure that everyone does have access to do what they have to in any circumstance. Yes.
Thank you. Candidate West, what measures, if any, do you think the Minnesota Legislature should enact regarding women's reproductive health?
Speaking of fear-mongering, this issue has been fear-mongered to death. In Minnesota, the Supreme Court changed nothing, and the state legislature can't change that either. The Supreme Court, in the Minnesota Supreme Court case, Doe v. Gomez established abortion as a constitutional right under the Minnesota Constitution. So the legislature can't change that. Ramsey District Court also threw out incredibly reasonable legislation. So you talk about what I'd like to do. It's simple things like having a doctor perform this procedure outside of a hospital. We should put that inside of a hospital by a doctor. A district court threw that law out, which we already had. There is really no law that can be passed on this based on our Supreme Court and our district court precedents. They don't even allow incredibly reasonable legislation. So the state legislature is not going to be able to do anything on this.
Thank you. And again, Candidate West, many are concerned with increased gun violence in our communities. What legislation, if any, would you support to help reverse this trend and respond to citizens' need for safe communities?
Crime is out of control in our state, and it's top to bottom, and it stems again from not enforcing the law. For example, straw purchases really are hardly ever prosecuted, and they're gross misdemeanors. Well, maybe if we make them a felony, they'll start being prosecuted, because a lot of metrics that are judged for county prosecutors and the like are based on felonies. And all felonies get bumped up from city prosecutors to the county. And that can enforce more laws and put criminals behind bars rather than letting them do a straw purchase on gun, put that gun on the street. Now, there have been other gun control bills put out there that would do absolutely nothing to make our community safer. And they'll say, oh, no, that's not what we mean. We just want background checks. And it's like, everybody has to go through the background checks. Those straw purchasers are going through the background checks and then selling it behind the store or whatever. And that is illegal already. So there's a lot, and those laws would only serve to make people who obey the law into criminals, because now that creates barriers if you're trying to lend somebody your firearm. There's a lot of reasons. I'm getting this stopped, but it's we need to enforce the laws on the books, and we have good ones, and we should make them more severe.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsammy, what legislation, if any, would you support to help reverse the trend of gun violence and respond to citizens' need for safe communities?
So, the first time I actually shot a gun, I was 16 years old. My neighbor took me out, and we didn't get to go hunting, but it was at the range. I believe when it comes to gun legislation that there is a lot that needs to be done about education on guns, but there also needs to be stricter background checks. We need to make sure that we do have red flag laws, and we need to make sure that we actually are paying attention to also the mental health of people who are buying guns. Gun suicide is one of the highest things in Minnesota, and making sure that we actually have a system that's in place that could help people will do wonders, but it will do us a lot better and make our communities a lot safer.
Thank you. And this will be our last question before closing statements. First, Candidate Ramsammy. Modest increases have been made recently in the state's public assistance programs such as SNAP, MFIP, and General Assistance. If elected, will you support passing further increases in the 2023 or 24 sessions, and why or why not?
Sorry, can you hear the question again, please?
Sure. Modest increases have been made recently in the state's public assistance programs, such as SNAP, MFIP, and General Assistance. If elected, will you support passing further modest increases in the 2023 or 2024 sessions? Why or why not?
I would support these programs and increasing more funding into programs like SNAP, mainly because if it is helping our communities and if it is helping us, then it should be funded more. To be 100% honest with you, I am not too familiar on this, and I will probably be making a video about this later tonight with a real kind of response on how I feel about this.
Thank you. Candidate West, if elected, will you support passing further modest increases to public assistance programs such as SNAP, MFIP, and general assistance?
Minnesota has a very generous social welfare program across the board. And one of the problems with being as generous as we are is we have massive amounts of fraud. We had massive fraud in the $90 million sum in the child care programs. We had $250 million of fraud that's in the news right now for feeding hungry children. It's just, we want to help people and get them the help that they need, but we need to make sure it's actually going there, or else it's an endless money pit. Considering the giant inflationary environment we're in and the massive crime spike, I think it's probably reasonable that we do something on it. When eggs are $4 a dozen instead of $1 a dozen, which is literally the price difference in the last 9 months at Walmart, your SNAP benefits aren't going to go as far. So it is reasonable that we go there, but what we do need to do is actually audit these programs and check assets to make sure that the people who are on these programs actually need these programs. We don't need to be giving this money to criminals.
Thank you. And now closing statements, beginning with candidate Ramsammy.
Well, first things first, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the Ham Lake Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. This is where true political discourse does happen, and it allows for our communities to see both candidates and understand the issues at a deeper level. Of course, I invite everyone to please check out my website, ashton4mn.com, and have a good night.
Thank you. And candidate West, your closing statement.
Thank you for everybody for staying very late. I expected people to start trickling out after about 10 minutes, but I appreciate everybody staying and listening, and thank you for hosting Majestic Oaks, the Chamber, and the League. I just want to finish the job that I started so badly. Highway 65 has been something that has occupied way too much of my brain for too long not to finish the job. So that's my number one goal, keep government doing its core functions. Building our roads and bridges, and keeping us safe. And that's what I plan to do going forward. Thanks so much for coming out tonight, everyone.
Thank you, candidates Nolan West and Ashton Ramsammy, for speaking to voters about issues and for running in the election for House of Representatives District 32A. Thanks to our fantastic co-sponsors, the Ham Lake Area Chamber of Commerce, for their hard work pulling this forum together. And thanks so much once again to NorthMetro TV for their excellent video production. Thank you, all of you here in person and those in the TV audience, for becoming informed voters. If you have questions left unanswered by this forum, contact the candidates directly. And as we move through the election season, link to all our local election forums at LWV ABC MN.org or YouTube. There are a lot of races this year because of redistricting, a lot of races on this year's ballot. So you might be surprised. You might want to preview your ballot, and you can do that by going to MN Votes, that's vote with an S, mnvotes.gov, and a bunch of other voter relation things at that same web address. Register to vote, update your registration, or to find out how to vote early, or where to vote on election day. Go to mnvotes.gov. When you vote, you participate in our democracy. You make it stronger, and you make it yours. So vote November 8th.